Hello there. It looks like Germany is fed up to the back teeth with the EU and some member states, especially France. Brussels is not happy with Germany, because the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz had the temerity to make a unilateral nation-state decision to send 6 billion quid's worth of military and humanitarian aid to Ukraine, and then make the demand that other EU nation-states also make similar unilateral donations of aid. But the EU Commission wants all aid money to flow through its European peace facility. I mean, what kudos is in it for Ursula von der Leyen and her Eurocrats if the member states bypass the centrally controlled system? How can the EU commissioners stand on the world stage basking in the credit of giving out aid if it doesn't get politically laundered through their coffers first? And the EU Internal Market Commissioner, Frenchman Thierry Breton, said, "Today we see that Germany is trying to go solo. It hasn't fooled anyone, and in particular it is trying to stop supporting the European Peace Facility." Ooh, we can't have that, can we? Because it transpires that Germany has committed 17.1 billion euros in aid to Ukraine as of the 31st of October last year. That's the second largest figure behind the US. But France has only managed a paltry 544 million euros. That puts Macron's France back in 15th place, behind even Lithuania, reports Politico. And Scholz has said that most EU member state contributions are not sufficient to meet the needs of Ukraine. The European Peace Facility, which seems to be funding a war at the moment, but God forbid anything is properly titled these days. You know, like woke, inclusion and diversity should all come under the correct title of anti-white. Anyway, the European Peace Facility is funded by EU member states in proportion to their gross national income, which means that Germany pays the lion's share. Well, bully for them. But it does then get lumped up as an EU fund, making the commissioners look very beneficial when they apportion it out. Much in the same way as those EU funds that Ramonas were always bleating about during Brexit, and still bleat about today, when they refused to believe that the UK gave twice as much to Brussels in the first place than they got back in those EU grants. Anyway, Germany recently tried to get an arrangement going whereby any money they give unilaterally to Ukraine could be taken away from the amount they were earmarked to give the European Peace Facility. And of course the Eurocrats don't like that idea, for I would surmise 2 reasons. 1. Ukraine isn't the only beneficiary of money from the European Peace Facility, so Germany's plan could end up denying other receivers of aid money. And 2, the Eurocrats want to be seen as the ones to control all the money and decide where it goes. Now, at the moment, some EU member states are giving their existing stocks of weapons to Ukraine and are being paid for doing it out of the European Peace Facility money. So the money Germany puts into the pot is then used to pay for new military kit for the other EU states. Something that benefits member states with a large armaments manufacturing base like France, Italy and Spain, that also put in a lot less into the fund than Germany. Germany wants to see these countries place orders for new kit that is sent directly to Ukraine. Then there is the issue that when one member state gets upset with Brussels or another member state, they could veto the EPF money going to Ukraine, as Hungary has done in the past. With one unnamed German diplomat being quoted by Politico as saying, For Ukraine, it is decisive that military aid reaches it without delay. The EPF is useful, but can be blocked by a single member state, as has happened time and again in the past. Bilateral support is direct and quick, and should be considered as an at least equivalent contribution. Heaven forbid that someone gets one over on the Germans in the EU by recycling German money through their own economy. That would never do. Germany is the economic and manufacturing engine room of the Eurozone and the wider EU. The rewards and kudos must go to them. Anyway, on a wider defence issue, EU Commissioner Breton was also asked whether the EU was looking to protect itself independently of the US nuclear umbrella, something that would surely mean pulling away from NATO. And he replied that all aspects of defence must be taken into consideration. An EU nuclear weapon force maybe, led by France, with the UK roped in somehow. And the driver for that are fears that the US will pull back from protecting Europe from the likes of Putin's Russia should Donald Trump get back into the White House, coupled with the fact that Trump's Republicans are holding up a US military aid package to Ukraine worth 60 billion quid. But Trump's previous warnings that he could do so were all predicated on the fact that so many European NATO member states were not putting 2% of their GDP into defending themselves, always expecting the US to fill the gaps. That was what was infuriating not just Trump, but also Obama and Biden as well. They said that Europe must step up to the plate, and if it doesn't think it important enough to do so, then why should the US taxpayer have to pay? Anyway, while Chancellor Scholz of Germany was peeving over those contributions, another German politician, former German Defence Minister and now EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, was preening herself on the global stage at the 54th World Economic Forum meeting in Davos. And she said that the biggest threat we all face today is misinformation and disinformation. And, given the antics of the last few years, I would say Brussels is the master of those. Wouldn't you? Anyway, she also said that there was a lot of mis- and disinformation out there regarding the Ukraine situation, and went on to tell us the truth. Well, the EU Commission truth on the matter.
For example, with disinformation and misinformation. And nowhere has there been more of that than on the issue of Ukraine. So let me provide you with some real information. Russia is failing on strategic goals. It is first and foremost a military failure. We haven't forgotten that when Russia invaded Ukraine, many feared that Kyiv would fall in just a few days and the rest of the country within weeks. This did not happen. Instead, Russia has lost roughly half of its military capabilities. Ukraine has driven Russia out of half of the territories it had captured. Ukraine has pushed back Russia's Black Sea fleet and reopened a maritime corridor to deliver the grain to the world. And Ukraine has retained its freedom and its independence. Russia's failure is also economic. Sanctions have decoupled its economy from modern technology and innovation. Russia is now dependent on China. And finally, Russia's failure is also diplomatic. Finland has joined NATO. Sweden will follow soon. And Ukraine is closer than ever on its path to the European Union. And all of this tells us that Ukraine can prevail in this war, but we must continue to empower their resistance. Ukrainians need predictable financing throughout 2024 and beyond. They need a sustained supply of weapons to defend Ukraine and regain its rightful territory. They need capabilities to deter future attacks by Russia. And they also need hope. They need to know that with their struggle, they will earn a better future for their children. And Ukraine's better future is called Europe. And it was with immense joy that last month we decided to launch the negotiations of accession for Ukraine's EU membership. This will be Ukraine's historic achievement, and it will be Europe responding the call of history.
Not much mention of Germany and its contributions there, was there? Nor of the UK either. Anyway, now that there's a massive NATO exercise in the offing, where the UK has committed 20,000 service personnel, including 16,000 soldiers, we hear that the chief of NATO's military committee, the Dutch Admiral Rob Bauer, has told assembled defence chiefs in Brussels that we need a war-fighting transformation of NATO, and that Ukraine will have our support for every day that is to come, because the outcome of this war will determine the fate of the world. The outcome of this war. Is he talking about Ukraine winning on its own, or something else? He also said that the driver behind this war was Putin's fear that democracy would take hold in Russia itself. This war has never been about any real security threat to Russia coming from either Ukraine or NATO. This war is about Russia fearing something much more powerful than any physical weapon on earth: democracy, he said. But he also said that the tectonic plates of power were shifting, and as a result we face the most dangerous world in decades. We need public and private actors to change their mindset from an era in which everything was plannable, foreseeable, controllable, focused on efficiency, to an era in which anything can happen at any time, an era in which we need to expect the unexpected, an era in which we need to focus on effectiveness. This all sounds like an ominous warning of something about to happen, doesn't it?